Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Okay, welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast. We're here in studio at the Functional Bodybuilding Lab. Thanks to Molly for giving us that tip on a great name for what we're going to call this beautiful place. And we're still working out the kinks of the video podcast. If you didn't catch the last episode, you missed some comedy, that's for sure. I went full body sweats over here, like dripping, and the level of concern on the production team back here was high. Sati is over here trying not to like totally lose it. She's like, wow, this guy is... Did he just take a shower? I'm pretty sure I saw him the whole time. And what, you had a little hiccup last time? What'd you do?
What, with the nose thing?
Yeah.
I have a large nose, and, sometimes I bump my microphone with it by accident.
Thank you for saying that. I can't be the only one that's doing things over here that are embarrassing, okay?
No.
But yeah, here we are for episode number 4 in studio, video podcast. If you're listening to us on a listening platform, then head over to our Functional.Bodybuilding YouTube channel where you can catch some of these episodes in full, and you can see our lovely faces and my awesome Functional Bodybuilding t-shirt that I'm rocking right now.
Yeah, you can pick that up on our website.
That's up on the website, that's for sure. Grab the large, because the medium for me is a little schmedium, so I think a large would be a good
Just
fit.
makes your biceps pop.
I know. They always pop. It's just whether you can really see them,
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fair.
Okay. All right. Good. Let's do it. We're talking today about body image as we perceive it of ourselves. And this is a super complicated topic and has been impacted by, for each person, lots of different things, I'm sure. But I did get a message on the DM, and it was from a gentleman. Well, I can't remember his name. Apologize for this. Marcus. I would love to see some posts or some conversations about your aesthetic goals and the issue of body dysmorphia and how to accurately assess one's own progress. So what do you hear that's caked into that question? What's there? What's beneath the surface of that?
There's a lot here, and I think before we get into this conversation, we should lay a little bit of groundwork, because there is a level of body dysmorphia where it gets into the territory of really needing support that goes beyond what a health and fitness company can do for you. And that's probably more about therapy and doing some deep self-work to really understand the issues that are psychological around this. But there is also a realm that I think is very prevalent within anyone who's into fitness, where you are working very hard on your body. Typically, you're training in the gym, you're probably conscious of your nutrition. And because you're looking at yourself every day, it's very, very difficult to gauge progress. And that can lead to some emotional turmoil that can affect your life in different ways and can affect your training motivation too.
Yeah. I think that a couple episodes ago we talked about knowing your lane as a coach and as a fitness professional, and when it's time to outsource or refer people out to other professionals. This is all just it's a spectrum of needs and like intensity of obstacles and challenges that people face, and within the body image, body dysmorphia, or how we perceive ourselves. That happens on a spectrum. There's a point at which you may try some techniques, or you work with a health and fitness professional to, uncover what maybe is standing in the way of you accepting how you look and feel in your body, and seeing the progress that you're making, and then you realize like, okay, this isn't help. I'm not breaking through. I haven't had my breakthrough yet. I need more support. Maybe it's at that point you go to a trained professional, somebody who deals with this as their full career, and they've had a lot of clinical training and working with people that have challenges looking at themselves with an objective lens which is so hard to do. And I will when you started talking, I was just like, I just went immediately back to when I was like in my early 20s and just had like such a negative experience with my body that it really shaped a lot of my early years in coaching and really transformed a lot of things for me in my 20s. My story of how I got into nutrition and wanting to do that first diet that my cousin put me on was the story of eating kind of in college and like not, I suppose putting on the freshman or sophomore 15 where it was like I was playing a sport but I was eating, low quality food, and I got injured sophomore year, so I stopped being able to train with the soccer team, but I was still hanging out with them and, doing all the same behaviors. And I think I wasn't like conscious of it, but I put on weight, and not like good weight that felt good. And I remember there was a kid on my team. It was right before the winter break in sophomore year, and we were just wrapping up the NCAA tournament. Keep in mind, I'm like a bench warmer. I'm not playing. Like, I've talked about Scrub Cup on this podcast before, but the Scrub Cup was when, like, the team played on Friday, and then they had a day to recover, and then they played again on Sunday. And like those of us that were scrubs and didn't play, we had to come on Saturday and play a scrimmage with each other, and it was like embarrassing because the coaches didn't even show up, and it was like, it almost felt like punishment. But anyway, we had just finished up Scrub Cup. I took off my shirt, and one of the guys was like, oh Mark, Philly, you're looking a little abdominous. And I like laugh about it, and I'll joke about it because it's kind of a funny word, but man, that it really messed with me back then. And because I was a fit guy. I was like somebody who, was athletic looking, and always, that was how I viewed myself. And in that moment, I just caught like this feeling of like, man, I'm not a representation of that right now. I feel somebody else is seeing me in a different light too. And, coming off of 3 or 4 months of really not being able to be very active because I was injured, and eating poorly, I just flipped a switch and was like, kind of really, I spent the next month just going to the gym more. I was at home now because I went home for the winter break, back home from college. Mom's cooking food. I was eating, good food, and started to feel good about myself again. And then it was like that January, about a month and a half later, where I was like, oh, I want to step it up a notch. And I dove into this this diet that was like super restrictive. I didn't know it at the time. It didn't feel restrictive. I was like, I'm just trying something new. And I started to see like dramatic results really quickly. And I got lean, and it was like the first time. I mean, I like lost that weight that I had put on, but I also got like much leaner than that. I was like, whoa, I have abs. Like, I was starting to see parts of my body I'd never noticed before. And I only knew how to do it this one way. Knew how to do it with I think it was like a 2,200 calories, diet, which was super clean, and it had some of these weird foods that I mentioned in the past, and wasn't particularly tasty. It was just, and I did that at the same time as like our soccer team took on off-season conditioning with this like crazy conditioning coach that came out of nowhere. We'd never met him, and he was like, I went from like training kind of sort of hard to like intense work. So I'm like 2,100 calories a day, crazy output, body transformation quick. Go on spring break that year to Cabo with like my, roommates. First like college trip like that. And I saw myself as a particular way. And when I came back from that spring break, I just could not maintain this like crazy restrictive diet. I was like, why can't I do this? Like I'm starving. I'm like wanting to eat bad food again. And I just started this like yo-yo thing, this like really in and out of like good and bad behaviors. And it was just kind of bit of a mess, but now I was suddenly like very clued into my body in a way that I hadn't been before. And the next 2 to 3 years had some big ups and downs for me with like, feeling good, training hard, eating well, and then really not. And I know that when I started fitness coaching, one of my biggest missions was, how can I help other people avoid or overcome the mental preoccupation that I had for so long with food, my body, and the need for control over everything. And that was just like, it just got deeply ingrained in me in those years. And it was super painful. And I was like, I could not look at myself and see anything that was like I was objective. Like I remember pictures of myself when I had graduated college and I was traveling in Southeast Asia, and I just remember how much I hated how I looked and felt. And I see the pictures and I don't like it. And here I was meeting all these interesting people from all over the world. They're like, man, you're really strong. Like you must, like they see me and I'm like, oh, like I feel sick to my stomach looking at myself. I don't even know who that guy is compared to this other person that I was when I got super shredded and leaned out and was like, a robot. And now I'm not a robot. I'm like enjoying my life out here doing this other thing, but I'm like held back by this vision I have of myself.
What do you think over time led to a shift in your approach from doing everything around training and nutrition with that mindset of being preoccupied with your physical appearance and your dissatisfaction with that versus maybe a focus on your energy or how you feel or your performance or anything else that became more positive for you?
Well, the introduction to CrossFit was really important for me in my transcending some of that. Because CrossFit was, I was like a sport athlete, but I didn't care too much about soccer. Like I had about a year where I was like, I want to get that starting spot, or I want to be able to, and then I was like, I'm over it. Like I'm here to train because it makes me feel good. And then very soon thereafter, it was like, I'm here to train because it makes me look good. Like I'm looking good. And I would dabble in the performance stuff in college where like we would be doing team workouts and there'd be power cleans, and I was power cleaning more than everyone else, and that felt good. And I could bench press more than everyone else, that felt good. But ultimately it was like, if I didn't look a certain way, then that was my main driving force. And the nutritional approach up until at that point that I had success with was just really manage your quantity, and just, doesn't matter if it's, I remember I told you I was like eating Fruit Loops and cottage cheese and American Craft singles and, toasted tuna melts. And like, it was not like high quality ingredients and high quality foods. It was just like, if you eat this much and you eat it in the right amounts, then you could change your body, So when CrossFit came along, I had kind of gone through like a pretty down and depressed period of time where that old way of thinking of like, I'm just training to look a certain way, I'm eating foods to look a certain way, had just failed me. It really had failed me. And I got connected with some coaches that had like got me into thinking more about food quality, more about just like how strong can you be. Like they would applaud how strong I was and how well I could move and how well I could swing a golf club. And they were just like, wow. And it just started to fill me up with like, oh, I can get confidence in myself, not from like how I look in the mirror or like how restricted my diet is, but like by eating good food, by enjoying myself, and by, having a body that functions really well. CrossFit enters the picture, and it just sort of also elevated that, where it was like, people care what you can lift. People they like your performance, like what's going to help you perform better. Plus, early days of CrossFit, there was this big movement around diets that were really centered around quality versus quantity. It's like, here's paleo. And it was like, in my mind, it was like, I learned it like, I can eat whatever I want because I'm training, as long as I just kind of understand what's good quality, right? Like, I mean, that in itself is restrictive, and that in itself has some, like, issues that come up with it. But it was a shift in mindset where I wasn't weighing things out. I wasn't counting calories. I wasn't worried about, like, sticking to the diet. Like, I could literally wake up and be like, I want to have some, almonds and turkey. I want to cook some sausages. I'm going to eat some roasted vegetables and cook a steak, and, just stick to the principles. And that was massively freeing for me, where I didn't have to, like, be engaged in the numbers so much. And I also got to think more about what is going to help me move faster in the workout. And I didn't have to think, how does this workout make my biceps bigger, or make my, how am I going to hit my legs today? So that departure helped me just to, like, free my mind. And the combination of those two things simultaneously had this added benefit of, like, I started to look athletic and muscular and lean again. And so it was like, wow, I'm seeing this happen in a way that isn't requiring this painful process that I had been through in the past.
And fast forward to now, because you're very visible. You are on Instagram with hundreds of thousands of people looking at your body every day. Mm-hmm. And how much of that psychological factor plays into your life right now?
A fair amount, yeah. And, we've talked about this quite a bit behind the scenes, but it has been, I think back to, like, the early days of CrossFit and gaining a little bit of, like, awareness and attention out there. And, like, I post on Facebook once a week, like, people didn't see me most days. And, now people see me every single day. And that's a choice. That's a business choice. That's a personal choice. Like, that's how we've grown functional bodybuilding, is for me to be out there as the main and one of the representations of this is how it's done. And, I have at times, like, there have been periods that I've gone through where maybe energetically or digestive function or body composition, or the balance of, like, my training and how I'm nourishing myself, like, just doesn't feel good, doesn't feel optimal. Like, everybody goes through ups and downs. Some people will be in downs for years because they're not aware of it. I'm very aware of when I'm going through a down period, but during those down periods, just like anybody, I think, who's feeling kind of down and not, like, 100% confident in themselves, you don't want to be, like, seen during that time. Like, you definitely don't want to pop your shirt off and go do a workout with the camera on and post it on social media. And I can go through phases like that where I'm just like, I just don't really want to, I don't want to be seen right now. It feels hard. And that might come as a surprise to people. Somebody might listen to that and be turned off by it, be like, how could you have those feelings? Like, look at you. But it's one of the things that I have had in my life that I think has allowed me to connect with clients in a different way. I don't want to say that how I feel about it today compares in magnitude to how I felt about it in my 20s. But those feelings and those thoughts can stay with people for a long time. And I know this from work, from a lot of men that I've coached and people that I know that have done body building and body composition training and have really explored that. Bodybuilders will talk about this a lot. When you get used to seeing yourself in a certain way because you've dieted down or you've been in a bodybuilding show or you've gotten extremely lean, to move away from that, which is a natural rhythm of life, it can feel really hard psychologically. And it can be really trippy to try and see yourself and not be judgmental and not think negative thoughts. So those are things I kind of just have carried with me, even though I've learned a lot about how to, accept me for who I am, approach my movement practice and my food with more like openness and exploration, and how I can catch myself when I'm being really rigid. When I get really, really rigid with my food and really, really rigid with my training, it's a sign to me that I'm slipping back into some of these old behaviors where it's like, unless I control everything, I can't feel good about myself. And that is a recipe for disaster for myself, because ultimately we can't control everything. And that, if you try and you think you've got it, you are one step away from being out of control and everything feeling really horrible again in the way you look at yourself and the way you feel.
And when you work with your clients, what are some things that seem to make a difference in terms of ways to support them with feeling a little bit more confident around these things?
I think personally, it's getting people to just talk about it. I just feel as though maybe it's men that I've worked with in particular, it's just not discussed. And, trying to kind of keep all that in and like, I want to work through this. It's a conversation that should be had more. And it's a conversation I think that should be had with clients. And I've done this with male and female clients, but thinking of female client, it's a conversation I've had with somebody before they've entered into this journey of weight loss or fat loss. It's like, okay, where this person has a lot of body fat to lose. They need to lose weight for their health, for just general wellness. Who's not going to be supportive of that? And hey, what's going to happen? Like, what's this going to do for you? How do you envision yourself feeling when you get down the road of this and be, what if you were 30 pounds lighter today? What's that going to feel like to you? And like, hey, okay, you want to get abs? You want to get shredded? Cool. Like, what's that going to feel like when you're shredded? What is the vision? Let's start talking about it ahead of time. Because you might get abs and feel just as miserable in yourself. You might lose 40 pounds and look in the mirror and just not recognize yourself anymore and be freaked out and want to just gain weight right back, which has happened with clients of mine. The way to we can have these physical metrics that say, okay, I'm making progress. Look, I'm making progress. But progress, as I see it, is, okay, we've got health markers that we want to improve through how we treat our bodies with food and movement, right? You want to improve your blood pressure by getting processed carbohydrates out of your diet and exercising more. Okay, great, right? So there's health markers. Then there's like aesthetic changes that happen that could be part of the motivation for people. But there's a psychological underlying goal, which is I want to feel good. I want to feel confident. I want to love myself. I want to not spend this many hours a day hating myself. I want to spend, the moment that I catch the wrong glimpse and be like, oh, hey, that's just me today. Like, you want to learn how to get there. Like, that is freedom for people. And that was what I was chasing, was like, how the hell can I just get to a place where I don't think about that anymore? To get there, you need to process those thoughts and those feelings, how you feel today. Like, what are you feeling right now? What's that emotional, psychological health that you have around this topic? Because you might get the health markers to come down, you might lose the body fat, and you still hold on to that same thing. And that's like at the core of this topic, is all the things could change the right way, and you still look at yourself and you're like, fuck, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
I don't like this girl. I'm still, right? And that's maybe where the question comes from, is like, man, like I lost some, I gained some muscle, lost some body fat, and I still look at myself and I'm like, I'm nowhere near as, cut up as this person, or I'm not as, I don't have the same waistline as this person. There's just like, there's a lot of shame and like disgust that people feel still.
Yeah. And I think there is something too about how we think about progress with body composition, because it almost plants this seed that there's somewhere to get to, you're on your way to somewhere, but that target is ever moving, because as we age and as we change our life circumstances, our bodies will very naturally change with that. And you're guaranteed not to have the same body in 10 years that you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man, like, and that's some things that when I pause and I think about that, I look at some influential fitness mentors or people that I've looked up to in the industry that are about 10, 15 years older than me, who are like right around 50 years old. And, these, when I was a teenager, early 20s, like they were my age, like my current age, right? And they were like jacked and ripped and doing crazy fitness stuff. And, and then it's like they never stopped being good mover, or like moving and taking care of their bodies. It's just 15 years later, there's changes that happen. I'm not going to look like this for the rest of my life. And when I process that, I start to think, okay, well, what are the characteristics that I want to feel and have with me that are going to matter when I'm 60, and nobody is going to want to look at, Marcus with his shirt off on Instagram, like what's going to matter. And that helps me, like looking far enough out to say, is this really that important? And then also just that idea of catching myself when I get too into control, thinking I can control the outcomes, and remembering that it's like anything that adds to my mental preoccupation with body or with control over food or that is dangerous. Be aware that is, if you go hard down that road, all the physical changes might happen, and you will be sad and you will be miserable, and you will not have that feeling that you thought you were going to get when you lost the weight, or when you gained the muscle, or when you got the six pack. Because at that point, that thing that you got is super fragile. It could just crumble at any moment. And that's how I'm moving through life now. So the question was, what's your goal, Marcus? What's your aesthetic goal? I can't give it in I don't have like my tight elevator pitch on this one. Not like I'm trying to pitch it to anybody, but it's more like, I want to be an expression of sustainability in a body that looks and feels capable, athletic, and lean. Like I think that's, I can have that in a sustainable, balanced way, and I can have it in a unsustainable, unbalanced way. So that's just how I view it. It's like, okay, I'm lean. I'm 5% body fat, but man, I can't keep doing this. I thought I could, but this isn't working. Got to change it up. Like, I got to revisit this, because this is definitely not a long-term solution, for me And if I keep down this path, there's going to be consequences to me emotionally and psychologically. It's going to burn me out trying to hold on to this thing. So yeah, that's my very loosely described goals.
Yeah, someone asked you in a comment on one of your posts recently what your goal was, and you just wrote back, "Be awesome."
yeah. Be awesome. Right. What's your goal, Marcus? Be awesome. Well, yeah, just be, continue to be a model for others, like that they could, and being a model to me means like owning when I do things, when I go overboard and I do it wrong, or I kind of do it unsustainably, and then, really sharing the wins, which to me are like, this gave me some physical result, but it gave me this like mental, emotional result. That is what I was after. It's like, and I do believe everyone is after that. They're looking for what's the recipe that's going to make me feel great and be confident in myself and not stress about it. And you could do that at 10% body fat or 20% body fat. It doesn't matter what the number is. It's much more connected to like the feeling, the emotions, and how you can perceive yourself. And if we start the conversation there and we make that the thing that you're chasing,
yes,
then along the way the body changes can start to happen, and you can be like, oh, this is helping, or no, this is hurting me. And I think when the body changes, number one, I got to look this way, or I got to change this thing, and this is how, then like at 20, when I was 20 years old or 19 years old, let's see. Now I think technically I was like, I was 19 years old, and my teammate said that to me. And then what the following 6 months looked like I didn't connect the pain that I felt in that moment, and that, gosh, like I'm feeling this pain about how I feel. That's what I want to change. I just heard this and I was like, well, you got to change that by losing this,
Yeah.
And I didn't, I was young. I'm not, and this wasn't like a talked about thing back then. So I missed a lot of steps there. I missed an important step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ultimately, it led to a lot of lessons learned, a lot of tough times, a lot of questions. I think a lot of questions from like my close people, my family, my mom in particular, like, whoa, what's my son's getting a little overboard here. He's getting a little, it was an intense time where I was like, I'm really in control. I got this figured out. And then like back injury, knee injury, got overweight, like lost like my whole path. Right. And I've talked about many of those things on this podcast, and so much of it has influenced the choices that I've made in the years that followed.
Yeah. I really like what you said about just identifying the things that are more conducive to that feeling of confidence and well-being, and the things that aren't so conducive. And that could be things that you do with your training and your movement and your nourishment. And it could be unfollowing accounts on Instagram that make you feel like crap every time you look at them.
Yeah, totally. And firing a coach that has a very one-track mind that is only on this, and you're like, that just doesn't jive with me.
Right.
And you may find that your investment in coaching is better spent on working with a therapist that's going to help you, uncover like, well, what's at the root of this? And what's interesting is that I think once you uncover what's at the root of it, and you start to really work with the emotions and the feelings that are behind you not accepting your body for what it is today and how you feel, like, and then you truly get committed to like, I do want to make a change, then the recipe is still very much the same. You got to move, you got to nourish yourself well, you got to hydrate, you got to sleep well. So there's a combination of that can happen all simultaneously. You can start down the process of making better choices for your body that will support the psychological, emotional work that you're doing.
Yeah, because you can do the same practices and they could feel like punishment, or they could feel like this feels really good and this helps me in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably why 99% of diets fail people, is that it all feels like a punishment and not like, dude, I finally know that this is what I want to be doing and therefore I'm going to do it. And I can't fail because this is my path. This is what I'm doing.
Well, I really appreciate how you're able to open up, because I think that it's very helpful for people to hear that you still struggle with these things from time to time and what you've been through in your past, and that it's not just this glossy image of someone who's got it all figured out and that's it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that this feels like a safe place to do it, and even though probably a lot of people will see this that I don't know, it's still okay because I'm here with my team, the team, and that also, yeah, I want this to be something that people are talking about more with their significant others, the people that are most important to them, their family, friends, people in the gym, because the mission is still the same as it was when I left medical school. I was like, I'm going to coach fitness, and it wasn't like I want to coach people to be strong and lift weights. It was like I want to help people like feel better about themselves, because once they feel better about themselves, they're just going to show up in the world better, and for everyone, for themselves, for their family, for the close people, their work, all that. And the path to just feeling better about yourself involves a lot of stuff, but it involves like getting connected with like, well, what do you not love about you right now? Where is that coming from? Where did that start? And it might require healing some wounds. Like, that was a trauma when so-and-so said that to you. That was totally uncool. And it was not a reflection of who you were at the time. And now you have a choice. You have the ability to see that and decide, oh, I want to do it this way because that feels good to me. It feels right.
Yeah. And I think especially important to open up channels for men to communicate about these things, because I know women go through this, obviously, and we talk about it a lot. But I think every person on this planet has had a moment like that where they felt shame and felt like there's something wrong with them.
Sure, yeah. And the I'll end with this, which is the question that came through was, how do you actually know if you're making progress? And I think to me, it's like, I know I'm making progress when the emotions and the psychological consumption around how my body feels and how it's performing, how it's moving, becomes like less and less. Like when it's just like, I feel good.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about it. I'm not like and so it's not, did I put on muscle? Did I measure my waistline? Did the scale change? It's like, I've had the scale be 190 and I felt invincible. I've had it be 180 and I've felt just sick with what I've seen. I've had it 200 and thought I was, it's like, wow, I'm getting strong. I felt good about that. It's like, it's been all over the place in my life. And, I've stepped on the body composition scanner and it's pumped out a number and I've been like, oh, it's 0.2 above before.
Yeah.
And I've had it pop something out that was the same or more and been like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the competition. I feel awesome. And I look at the wins as the days like where I felt awesome and I felt good about myself, and the behaviors I was doing at the time were repeatable and sustainable for me. And that's it.
Perfect.
So thanks again for joining us here at the Functional Bodybuilding Lab studio. And we will, catch you next time?
Yeah, we welcome your questions and comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear any follow-ups from this. And if something about this episode struck a particular chord with you that felt personal and you want to share it with us, we would love to hear it, and we will definitely keep it confidential if that's how you would like that to remain.
For sure.
slide into the DMs, please.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye.